Welcome to another deep dive, and this one's going to be kind of special because today we're diving into a collection of your notes from March to December of this year.
Oh,
It's like opening up a time capsule,
yeah.
filled with thoughts, quotes from authors like Terry Pratchett and Bob Dylan.
Wow.
There's even some wisdom from a Guinness World Record holder.
I love that mix.
Yeah.
What I'm really curious about is seeing if we can connect these seemingly random ideas,
Yeah.
and uncover some hidden patterns in your thinking over time.
Hmm?
Did your perspectives evolve? Were there any recurring themes?
Let's find out.
Okay.
All right, so one of the first notes that caught my eye was from March. It's this almost magical phrase, don't run when no one is chasing you. What jumps out at you when you read that?
It makes me think of intentionality.
Yeah.
Setting your own pace instead of letting external pressures dictate your actions.
It's like a magician creating a sense of anticipation.
Right, exactly.
There's no need to rush towards an unknown finish line if you haven't even decided on the course yet.
I love that.
Have you ever felt that pressure, like you were sprinting towards something without a clear understanding of why?
Oh yeah, all the time.
This note, I think, could be a nudge to make more deliberate choices.
Definitely.
And this idea of breaking things down into manageable steps actually echoes a quote from Terry Pratchett that you jotted down in April.
Oh yeah.
He wrote, "The way to deal with an impossible task was to chop it down into a number of merely very difficult tasks and break each of them into a group of horribly hard tasks, and each one of them into tricky jobs in each one of them."
Yes.
Mhm.
From truckers.
Yeah.
It's such a Pratchett way of saying, even the most daunting challenges become less intimidating when you approach them step by step.
It's so true. And it makes me think about how we often get overwhelmed by the big picture and forget to focus on those smaller, achievable actions.
Yeah.
And speaking of approaches, you saved a Reddit post in November comparing top-down versus bottom-up thinking.
Yeah.
It feels connected to what we're talking about here.
Absolutely. Top-down thinking is like planning a meal. You have the finished dish in mind and work backwards to gather your ingredients and steps. Bottom-up is more like opening your fridge and getting creative with what you already have.
So taking this back to your life, what resonates more with you, top-down or bottom-up? Is there a project, a creative endeavor, or even just how you structure your day where one approach might be more beneficial than the other?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Keep that question in mind as we move on to our next theme, expectations versus reality. And we're going to use another one of your Pratchett notes as a springboard. This one's from March 22nd. "It took 1,000 steps to get to the top of a mountain, but one little hop will take you all the way back to the bottom."
Classic Pratchett. That's from Night Watch.
Yeah.
It's funny for sure, but it also captures that truth. The progress isn't always a straight climb to the top. Sometimes you're diligently making your way up that mountain, and then life throws a hop your way, and suddenly you're back at the base.
It's a reminder that setbacks are inevitable. And it makes me think about how we manage our expectations in the face of those setbacks. You also have a Brené Brown quote from November that feels very relevant here.
Okay.
"Disappointment is unmet expectations, and the more significant the expectations, the more significant the disappointment."
That's a powerful one. It suggests that maybe the key isn't to avoid disappointment altogether,
Right.
but to be mindful of how our expectations might be setting us up for it.
Exactly. Which brings us to another note you jotted down in April about lowering expectations without sacrificing standards. It seems contradictory,
Yeah.
but is it possible to achieve both?
Maybe that hop back down the mountain isn't always a bad thing. It could be a chance to kind of recalibrate, to reassess our expectations without compromising what truly matters.
I like that perspective. So as you reflect on your experiences, how do you navigate disappointment? Are your expectations realistic, or are they setting you up for a big hop down the mountain? Do you allow for adjustments along the way?
Things to think about.
And as we shift to our third theme, finding wisdom in unexpected places, I want to start with a Bob Dylan lyric you saved from April 7th. It's always intrigued me. "It frightens me the awful truth of how sweet life can be." What do you make of that?
Wow. That's a thought-provoking lyric. Is it the fear of impermanence?
Yeah.
The vulnerability of, intense joy?
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? And Dylan's words made me think about another note you captured this time from Marilyn Vos Savant,
Okay.
the Guinness World Record holder for highest IQ. In November, you wrote down, "To acquire knowledge, one must study, but to acquire wisdom, one must observe."
It's a great reminder that wisdom isn't just about book smarts. It's about paying attention to the world around us, learning from experiences both our own and those of others.
It's about connecting the dots, seeing the patterns, and extracting meaning from those observations. And it's not just about consuming information, but about truly understanding it.
Yeah.
Which brings to mind that Nick Milo quote, you saved that same month,
All right.
arguing that the point of reading isn't just completion, but grasping the author's message.
Yes, it's about being an active participant in the learning process, not just a passive consumer of information.
Hmm.
It makes me think about how we approach learning in general.
Hmm.
Are we truly engaging with the material, or are we just skimming the surface?
Right. And that leads us to this really fascinating note from November 3rd about unoccupied temperature.
Okay.
You were exploring the concept of preparation, suggesting that a space needs to be preheated before it can be comfortably occupied.
Interesting.
What if we approach new situations or relationships with that same idea in mind?
Oh, that's cool.
Perhaps there's a preheating phase where we observe, gather information, and adjust our expectations.
I love that.
It suggests a more thoughtful and intentional approach to engaging with the world around us. So let me ask you this. What's something you've learned through observation that study alone couldn't teach?
Ooh, good question. Let me think about that one for a second.
Okay. Well, while you're pondering that, let's move on to our final theme for this part of our deep dive. The power of perspective. You have another Terry Pratchett quote from April of 27 that I think sets the stage beautifully. Nothing's louder than the end of a song that's always been there.
Wow, that's beautiful.
What a profound statement.
Mhm.
It makes you think about endings loss and even the realization that something has always been present, but we only notice it when it's gone.
It really highlights how our perspective shapes our experience.
Yeah.
Something can be ever present, but until we shift our focus, we may be completely unaware of it.
Right. And speaking of perspective shifts, you have a Charles Adams quote from November that I think ties in perfectly here. Normal is an illusion. What is normal for the spider is chaos for the fly.
Oh, it's a good one.
Talk about a mind-bending thought. It reminds us that there's always more than one way to view a situation,
Right.
and what might seem normal to one person could be completely foreign to another.
It challenges us to consider things from different angles, to step outside of our own limited perspective and see the world through a different lens.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And even seemingly negative experiences can be reframed for growth. Which brings to mind that note you took from the Daily Stoic about choosing hurt over anger.
Oh, yeah.
They argue that hurt can lead to healing and understanding, whereas anger often exacerbates the situation and prevents us from moving forward.
Right.
It's about acknowledging those difficult emotions, but choosing how we respond to them. It's about asking, what can I learn from this experience, rather than getting stuck in a cycle of blame and resentment.
It's a powerful reminder that even challenges can be opportunities for growth if we approach them with the right mindset.
So as you wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'd love for you to consider a situation in your own life where a shift in perspective might be beneficial.
Yep.
How would viewing it from a different angle change your understanding? What new insights might emerge? We'll continue this discussion in our next deep dive.
Sounds good. You know, it's fascinating how a simple shift in perspective can completely change our understanding of a situation. And speaking of perspective, let's circle back to that note you made on December 3rd. I'm full of thought, but I am the thinker. It really struck a chord with me.
Me too. It's a powerful statement, isn't it? It makes you question the nature of consciousness, the relationship between our thoughts and our sense of self.
Exactly. If you're not your thoughts, then who are you? It's a question philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries, and it seems like it's something you've been pondering as well.
Definitely. And it's interesting how this idea connects to the theme of finding wisdom in unexpected places. You're pulling wisdom from all these different sources, authors, a Guinness World Record holder, even a Reddit post. You're not limiting yourself to any one perspective.
And that's a key takeaway from this deep dive, isn't it? It's not about blindly accepting any one viewpoint, but rather holding multiple perspectives in mind and seeing how they interact. Where do they intersect? Where do they diverge? What new insights emerge from those points of connection and friction?
It's like we've been doing in this very deep dive, taking your seemingly random notes and weaving them together to reveal these larger patterns in your thinking.
Exactly. We're uncovering insights, A&D raising new questions, like that note you have from November 26 about assuredness being tied to feeling understood, valued, and accepted. It made me wonder about the source of that security.
Right. Is that sense of security something we primarily get from external validation, or is it something we can cultivate from within?
It's an important question, especially in light of that Charles Adams quote about normal being an illusion. If our sense of self is constantly being molded by external forces, how do we develop a stable and authentic sense of who we are?
It's like we're trying to build a foundation on shifting sand. And then there's that quote from the Daily Stoic about choosing hurt over anger, about using difficult emotions as opportunities for growth.
It's about recognizing that our emotions, even the negative ones, can be valuable sources of information. They can give us insights into ourselves and our relationship with the world.
It's not about suppressing those emotions, but about making conscious choices about how we respond to them. And all of this circles back to that central question: if we are not our thoughts, then who are we?
Perhaps the answer isn't a neat and tidy definition, but an ongoing exploration, a process of uncovering the complexities and contradictions that make us human.
And maybe that's the beauty of it all. The journey of self-discovery never really ends. There's always more to learn, more to understand, more to explore, just like this mountain of notes you've accumulated.
It's true. There's a wealth of insight waiting to be unearthed, connections to be made, and questions to be pondered. You even have a note from November 9th about taking detailed notes on books, summarizing what was said, and what was left unsaid.
Ah, yes. It's about reading between the lines, looking for the subtext and hidden meanings. Do you think we could apply that same approach to our own lives?
What a fascinating idea. Imagine applying that to your own personal narrative, not just focusing on the explicit details, but looking for those subtle nuances, the unspoken truths and the underlying assumptions that shape your perceptions.
It's like we're constantly writing and revising our own stories, and by becoming more aware of that process, we gain more control over how the stories unfold.
And perhaps that's another piece of the puzzle, in understanding who we are, recognizing ourselves as the authors of our own lives. We have the power to shape the narratives that define us.
That's an empowering thought, isn't it? We have the ability to choose the stories we tell, the perspectives we embrace, and the meaning we create. And as we continue to explore your notes, I wonder what other hidden gems we'll uncover and what new pathways of exploration they'll reveal.
Me too. But before we get too carried away, let's acknowledge the sheer volume of information. We've covered everything from magic tricks to mountain climbing, from Bob Dylan lyrics to the Guinness Book of World Records.
It's been quite a journey, but I'm noticing a common thread running through your notes: and intentionality, a drive to learn and grow and make sense of the world.
And that intentionality is reflected not just in what you've chosen to capture, but also in the very act of note-taking itself. It's a deliberate practice, a way of actively engaging with your thoughts and observations.
And as we've seen, these notes aren't just passive repositories of information, they're active catalysts for deeper reflection. They spark new connections, prompt insights, and lead to new avenues of exploration.
They're like little seeds waiting to be nurtured and cultivated into something more.
Mhm.
And I'm excited to see what continues to blossom from this fertile ground of your curiosity and insight.
Speaking of those seeds, you have a note about the power of quotes to spark new ideas. Let's delve into that. You know, it's amazing how just a simple collection of notes can lead us down so many fascinating paths. It's like we're piecing together this mosaic of your intellectual life.
Yeah, each note is like a tile,
Yeah.
and as we place each one, a new pattern emerges. It really speaks to the interconnectedness of knowledge, how one idea can spark another and lead to like a whole chain reaction of insights.
And it's not just about the individual ideas, but about the connections between them. It reminds me of that Terry Pratchett quote about the 1,000 steps up the mountain and the one hop back down. You know, we often get so focused on the destination
Right.
that we forget to appreciate the journey itself.
You've hit on something really important there. It's like we're so fixated on reaching the summit that we miss the lessons learned along the way, you know? The stumbles, the small victories that make the journey worthwhile.
Exactly. And maybe that's where the real wisdom lies. Not in achieving the goal, but in embracing the entire process with all its ups and downs.
That resonates with the note you have from November 27th. It's a quote from Bern de Grodnik about celebrating mistakes as opportunities for learning.
Oh, yeah. If you would not make mistakes, you would have nothing to learn. Learning is what makes us richer, granting us wealth no money can buy.
Powerful.
It's a powerful reminder that setbacks aren't failures. They're valuable feedback that helps us grow.
It's about shifting our perspective from a fear of failure to a curiosity about what we can learn from our missteps.
Mhm.
And that brings us back to that intriguing note about unoccupied temperature and the idea of preparation. Maybe it's not just about getting the external space ready, but also about preparing ourselves, mentally and emotionally for new experiences.
I see what you mean. It's like we're preheating our own internal thermostats,
Yeah.
adjusting to the anticipated conditions so that we can better navigate whatever comes our way.
And perhaps that's a crucial aspect of managing expectations.
Yeah.
Recognizing that there will be challenges and preparing ourselves to adapt and adjust as needed.
It's about packing a mental toolkit with resilience, flexibility, and a healthy dose of self-compassion. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive, and it's been incredible to witness the depth and breadth of your reflections. As we wrap up, though, I find myself returning to that final note. I'm full of thought, but I'm the thinker.
Such a profound statement. It invites us to contemplate the very essence of consciousness, the intricate relationship between our thoughts and our sense of self.
Right.
As we've delved into your notes, we've seen how those thoughts can spark action-shaped perspectives and ultimately guide us on our unique journeys.
And perhaps that's the most significant takeaway from this exploration, the recognition that we are not merely passive recipients of information, but active participants in shaping our understanding of the world. We have the power to choose what we focus on, how we interpret our experiences, and ultimately who we become.
And as you continue to document your thoughts, observations, and inspirations, remember that those notes are more than just words on a page. They represent your intellectual curiosity, your thirst for knowledge, and your unwavering commitment to growth.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into that vast ocean of ideas. Who knows what other treasures you'll uncover along the way?